It was a day like any other when I heard the news that would change everything. What? Rowan's getting married? The words hit me like a bolt of lightning. It wasn't just the fact that my step-grandchild was getting married, it was how quickly it happened. A sudden announcement, seemingly out of the blue. I could feel the weight of the whispers around town, and before I had time to fully process it, I was hit with another shock. "We've decided to live on our own as a family," my son John said, his wife Haley standing smugly beside him. "So the maid, you can leave. We don't need you anymore." Their laughter was cold and heartless, like they were reveling in the power they thought they held over me. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Did they really think I'd crumble? After 15 years of being treated like a servant in my own home, I could finally breathe. A sigh of relief escaped my lips, a moment of freedom after years of suppression. Just then, someone entered the room behind me, and for a moment, the air seemed to thicken. My name is Charlotte, and I'm 57 years old. It's hard to believe so many years have passed since I first met Anthony. I was just 20 when we got married, fresh out of beauty school with dreams of building a career. But life had its own plans. I got pregnant unexpectedly, and Anthony and I rushed into marriage. At the time, I thought my life was being derailed. But Anthony promised me, "I'll make sure you and our child are always happy." I believed him, and Anthony did his best to keep that promise. He was kind and attentive, especially during my pregnancy. He took charge of the household, making sure I had everything I needed. When our son John was born, he took to fatherhood naturally. I remember the weekends we'd spend at the park, John on Anthony's shoulders, both of them laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. I watched them from the bench, my heart full, thinking our life was perfect. But as John grew older, I began to see cracks in the perfect picture. He was easily influenced by his friends and the world around him. In middle school, he fell in with the wrong crowd, and soon after, his behavior changed. Anthony and I tried to guide him, but nothing seemed to work. By the time John was in high school, I was at my wit's end. His grades started slipping, and I couldn't figure out why. He was smart, but something was distracting him. Then one day, I saw him walking hand in hand with a girl. That's when it all clicked. His focus had shifted from school to romance, and his grades were paying the price. I felt conflicted. How do you talk to a teenage boy about love and responsibility? I knew confronting him directly would lead to a fight. So, I confided in Anthony. "Let me handle it," he said, his voice calm and reassuring as always. That night, Anthony sat down with John. I listened from the kitchen, my hands trembling as I washed the dishes, waiting for the outcome. After about 30 minutes, Anthony returned. "We had a good talk," he said. John agreed to focus on his studies again. I breathed a sigh of relief, thankful for Anthony's steady hand in parenting. But even though John's grades improved, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. He wasn't the same playful boy I remembered. His teenage years were marked by rebellion, and despite our efforts, I could sense him slipping away from us. Years passed, and soon enough, John graduated high school and went off to college. It felt like a victory, a small one, but still a victory. With John out of the house, Anthony and I had more time to reconnect. We went on weekend trips, just the two of us, like we had in the early days of our marriage. I felt like we were finally getting our time back. The conversations were different, though. Back then, we used to talk about our dreams, Anthony's work, my aspirations as a beautician. But now, all we could talk about was John. It was as if he had become the center of our universe, even when he wasn't there. Still, those were some of the happiest years of my life. I felt like we had finally found our rhythm again. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Just as Anthony and I were getting used to our newfound freedom, John came home with news. "I'm getting married," he said. I could barely believe my ears. He had only been working for 6 months. How could he be ready for marriage so soon? Anthony and I were worried. Was he rushing things? We had married young too, but it was different back then. Still, John seemed sure of himself, so we gave him our blessing. A few days later, we met his fiancée, Haley. She seemed nice enough at first, but then something unexpected happened. A young boy, about 10 years old, walked in with her. "This is Rowan, my stepchild," John explained casually, as if we should have known all along. I was stunned. We hadn't known Haley had a child from a previous marriage. It took us a moment to adjust. But John seemed determined to marry her, so we didn't press the issue. Rowan, shy and quiet, quickly became a part of our family, though not by blood. I saw something in him, a vulnerability, a desire for connection, and we formed a close bond. 6 months after John's wedding, Anthony fell ill. It happened so quickly. One day, he was fine, and the next, he was bedridden. The doctors told me he would need constant care, and I immediately took on the responsibility. It was hard, but I was committed. After all, Anthony had always taken care of me. Now it was my turn to take care of him. John and Haley suggested we all live together. At first, it seemed like a good idea. We moved into one house, and for a while things were manageable. Rowan became my source of joy during those dark days. He was kind and thoughtful, always greeting me with a smile. We spent hours together, talking about everything from school to Anthony's health. But soon I realized that things were not as they seemed. John and Haley's true colors began to show. Haley refused to help with the housework, claiming she was too busy with child care, though Rowan was old enough to take care of himself. John loafed around the house on his days off, never lifting a finger to help. As Anthony's health deteriorated, my life became a cycle of caregiving and household chores. I had no time for myself, no time to grieve the life we had once had. And then, one day, Anthony passed away. The grief was overwhelming. He had been my partner for over 30 years, and now he was gone. But before I could even begin to process my loss, John and Haley were at it again. "How much is Dad's inheritance?" John asked, barely waiting for the funeral to end. His words cut through me like a knife. How could he be so cold, so callous? "I don't know," I whispered, still in shock. "We'll need to speak to the lawyer." But John wasn't satisfied. "I want my fair share," he demanded, as if his father's death was nothing more than a transaction. I didn't recognize him anymore. The kind, playful boy who used to laugh with his father in the park was gone. I could only assume it was Haley's influence. She had always been selfish, thinking only of herself. Now, it seemed, she had passed that mindset on to John. The only solace during those dark days was Rowan. He was the one who would come to check on me, asking if I was okay. "Grandma, don't worry," he would say, his voice gentle and reassuring. "I'll take care of you." His words touched me deeply. Even though we weren't related by blood, our bond was stronger than I ever imagined. Why couldn't John show the same kindness? Why couldn't he care for me the way Rowan did? Time passed, and eventually the lawyer arrived with Anthony's will. As expected, John and Haley were furious. They had been counting on a large inheritance, but Anthony had left the majority of his assets to me. "This isn't fair," John shouted. "We need more than you do." I tried to reason with them, offering to split the inheritance in half, but they weren't satisfied. They wanted it all. They even went as far as to threaten Rowan, saying he would have to drop out of school and start working if they didn't get more money. For years, I lived under their control. They manipulated me with threats, constantly using Rowan as a pawn to get what they wanted. I felt powerless, unable to stand up for myself. But through it all, Rowan remained my source of strength. He graduated from college, started working, and eventually found his own path in life. Then one day, everything changed. "Rowan's getting married," John said, his voice laced with the same smugness as always. But this time, I wasn't the one who would be surprised. "We'll be living on our own now, so we don't need you anymore," John continued. "It's time for you to leave." They expected me to be shocked, to be devastated. But instead, I smiled. Finally, I was free. After years of manipulation of being treated like a servant in my own home, I could walk away with my head held high. Just then, Rowan walked into the room. "Grandma, I'm here to pick you up." John and Haley looked confused. "What do you mean, pick her up?" they asked, panic rising in their voices. Rowan's smile was calm and steady. "We're moving in together," he said. "I'm taking Grandma with me." John and Haley's faces turned pale. They had never expected this. They had been counting on Rowan staying with them, keeping the family together. But Rowan had other plans. "Grandma already sold the house," he added, his voice full of quiet confidence. John exploded with anger, his face turning red. "Why would you do that?" he shouted. "Where are we supposed to live?" But Rowan remained calm. "That's your problem, not ours," he said. "This house belongs to Grandma, and she has every right to do whatever she wants with it." As John and Haley stood there, speechless, I packed my bags. Rowan had come to save me, just as he had always promised. Together, we walked out of the house that had once been filled with love but had turned into a prison over the years. Now, I live with Rowan and his wife in a beautiful apartment. For the first time in years, I feel truly free. Rowan's wife is kind and thoughtful, and we have built a new life together. A life filled with laughter, love, and peace. Every day we sit around the dinner table, sharing stories and enjoying each other's company. I've even returned to my old passion, cutting and styling their hair, just like I did back in beauty school. As I reflect on the past, I realize how much I've been through. But in the end, I'm exactly where I belong.